the thing. Everything looks and sounds so similar. I hate how like nondescript so many of these board game packaging look.
I know that board game like box art is almost like a genre. Like, you know how like certain eras of like movie posters kind of look the same. Like board game box art, a lot of it.
The current genre or like movement of box art is infuriating to me. I'm like, this sucks. It's too either nondescript or too like abstract. I'm like, this doesn't.
I want to check out. There's a list of games, or I shouldn't say a list, but that pixel artist that did our pixel art for the logo.
Yeah.
They keep posting on like Twitter or wherever. I can't remember, wherever I follow them. Like a stack of board games. Like, hey, this is the games I'm playing. And the only one that I can remember by name off the top of my head is called Wingspan. But they keep going like, oh, I got a fun evening planned, and like just posting a stack of board games. And that Wingspan game is always in the stack. So I'm like, I got to look up this game. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And it's just the two of us tonight. I feel like I was enunciating that weird a little bit at the intro there, but we're just going to roll with it. It just felt a little weird rolling off the tongue. I don't know why, but yeah, just the two of us. I guess a couple weeks ago, I don't know when the order of all these are coming out, but Randall and I did a little duo episode. It's been a little while since we've knocked a couple of these out, but we've all had some hectic schedules lately, so we've been getting in the episodes and the recording sessions that we can. So yeah, John and I have been doing some gaming, although I'll admit I haven't been doing a ton of gaming, although I'm pretty excited about the couple games I do have to talk about here. But some things that or at least one game that I have talked about on the podcast, and I guess I'll just start with that, is Wildfrost. It's a game that I briefly mentioned on Save It for the Cast. I think I actually talked about it a decent amount because I kind of remember thinking, man, it's a long intro. But basically, I've been playing that pretty much exclusively since I've been getting back into, I just went on a trip with some friends, which I'm going to actually talk about a board game later on. But because of that, I haven't been doing I've been out of my like kind of gaming groove. We just hosted the third annual Pursuing Pixels James Jam Game Gam. So like, I've just been kind of busy like monitoring that, hanging out in the Discord. So like when I've had some time to do some gaming, I'm like, I want to play something that I know, but at the same time, I kind of want to play something fresh. So like I said, I had mentioned this game Wildfrost that when I talked about it on the Save It for the Cast episode, I had kind of briefly scratched the surface, had like maybe just unlocked like the second tribe in the game, which is like basically there's 3 different tribes now. I just unlocked the third one a little bit ago and actually just played a run as that third tribe just before we hopped on here and did pretty terribly. But last night I actually had my best run yet in the game, like made it to I don't know if there's like worlds or biomes, because I don't know that the biome changed necessarily, but I made it to like the third wave or whatever you want to call it. But basically like it's very much like a roguelike. Like right off the bat, the game starts like you just go into the game, you play, you're starting to run. There's no, story, opening cutscene or anything like that. You're just like right into the game. And again, I didn't get too into the mechanics on the Save It for the Cast. So like you basically have 2 rows or 2 lanes that have 3 slots each, both on your side of the field. So you're playing on the left side, enemies are playing on the right side. And again, there's 2 rows, 3 slots each. So up to 6 like slots that you can play. And then I think you have like somewhere around like 7 cards in your hand when you start. You have to play your like leader hero to start right off the bat. And then as you go, you can unlock like crowns, for example. A crown is something that you can add to your cards in your hand, and then those will also be like in your hand right from the start. You can play them right at the beginning of a round or whatever against the enemies. So you can add that to, I think, any type of card, but some things you can only add to certain types of cards. Like there's charms and all these different types of buffs you can add to all different types of cards. But basically you have like your leader, which is sort of like a regular character. Then you have these other like companions, I think they're called, that you can bring along with you, and they're kind of like just secondary characters that you can build up. And it kind of plays like, not Darkest Dungeon style, but in the sense that like enemies are going to attack, the first enemy in the row, unless maybe, some enemies or your allies might have a feature like aimless is what it's called, so they'll just attack whatever enemy. And everything in this game is on like a timer. So you play your leader card. It will trigger its attack in 5 turns, and every card or every ally or enemy has like a health up in the top left, and they have an attack. So kind of like Magic the Gathering style. It's usually pretty straightforward. I think the highest health I've seen so far is like a boss maybe has like 30 health, but other than that, you're looking at like characters that maybe have like 2 to 8, and maybe 15 here and there if it's like a mini boss kind of card that you're fighting against. But there's a lot of cool like little twists. Like one of the bosses is like one really tall kind of mech card that almost takes up 2. It does take up both lanes, so you're like attack no matter what lane you're in, you're attacking. But another cool feature of the game too is there's no like hit chances or anything like that. Like if when your timer runs out and your character is supposed to do an attack or you throw something out on the table, like it's going to do the amount of damage it says, unless there's some kind of status effect at play or whatever. But there's nothing like, oh, there's a 50-50 chance that you'll land this attack or anything like that. So it's kind of interesting. In some ways, I remember seeing this in a review when I was looking at picking up the game, and I've run into this quite a few times where it's just like the luck of the draw, you're just kind of screwed. But that's just the nature of a roguelike too, if you're, a deck builder kind of situation. But yeah, as you progress, you're getting other types of cards as well. And you start with some of these as well, where like you'll just get like a dagger, and there's this like I forget what the actual name of the card is, but like basically you have a bunch of them in your deck, and so however many of them you have in your hand is how much damage that dagger will do. So if I got 4 of them right now, it'll do 4 damage, but then after I play that one, it will do 3 damage and vice versa. And then but even your redraw is also on a timer, so I think it usually starts at like 4, and then after, so you can redraw your hand early if you want. But that'll use up your turn. But then if you wait the full like 4 turns for the redraw timer to like cool down, then you can redraw for free essentially. You can also rearrange your characters that are, on the grid already. You can rearrange those and place them wherever you want to without using up your turn. You have to only like playing a card from your hand counts as using up a turn. But then you can also like, other than your leader, if any of your allies or companions take damage, you can actually grab them from the field and reshuffle them back into your deck to heal them, which is a very interesting mechanic. That also doesn't use up your turn, but obviously it takes them off the playing field if you were like kind of using them as a blocker for your leader or whatever. So it just like really gets, and there's so many different mechanics in this game, like different layers. Like I just kind of figured out this one mechanic that I was telling you about a little bit before we started, that like basically you're adding like a feature that's like counting up towards their health as their health counts down. So instead of like if a character has 10 health and then you add 3 of this like I forget what it's even called. I keep calling it the blue thing because it just adds this little blue symbol with the number 3 on it or whatever. So like my leader will say, for example, do 2 damage when their timer is triggered, and then on top of that they will add 3 of this blue counter to their whatever. So if a character had 8 health, I'd be doing 2 damage, and so they'd be down to 6, but then also adding 3. So then I really only need to do 3 more damage. It's like kind of like meeting in the middle sort of thing. I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, but then there's also like, it's not poison, but it's sort of like a poison where like if it'll, again, all of these status effects or whatever can happen to you or the enemies, but like you'll take double damage, or your attack will get cut in half, or, but every card has like all these secondary features. Like every time an enemy gets frozen, it's +1 attack on this card, or every time an enemy gets killed, +1 attack to this card. Or, some characters will have, it's called barrage. So if you attack a card in a row, it'll attack every card in that row. It's just like you'll get cards that will, make your countdown on a certain card go faster. It's just like it constantly, you got to really, I think that's really my main struggle that I'm having with the game so far is like, and not struggle with enjoying it, but struggle with actually doing well in the game is that I'm just like not taking the time to think about like, okay, how can I rearrange my characters on the playfield, and how can I like thinking of everything I can do with each move. I'm kind of just looking for like, what card can I play that makes the most sense? But it's very like grindstone-esque in its art style, which I said on the Save It for the Cast. Probably the only real like gripe I have about it is just like how similar it looks to that, even though I think it's a totally different artist and everything. But it just has like even like the structure to like the town and the unlockables just feels like so similar. That's like it's not even really a gripe because it's another great game and a great looking game. So it's like it's hard to even call it a gripe. But I really like how this game too, it has like a really cool, like Balatro does it a very subtly where you can like, look at a card and it kind of like rotates in like a pseudo 3D look to it, as you like hover over a card or if you move the joystick over it or the cursor. But this game, like even when you just move a card on the play field, it like really like, kind of shoves the pseudo 3D in your face, but in a really cool way. I mentioned this stuff on the Save It for the Cast too, but like some of the small gripes are just like the UI is like really small, like reading some of the cards, and then like sometimes like a card will trigger a secondary card, and so it's showing you what that secondary card is going to be, but in like a smaller little like pop-up window to the right of it. So it's like, man, I can barely read the regular size cards. I definitely can't read that. So especially if you're playing on like handheld on Switch, which is where I've been playing primarily. And like that's the other thing I'll say slightly as a gripe too is like the controls for gamepad are just like a little bit not bad, but they're just like a little bit tedious or clunky. Like you're just like, oh, what? Like I'm got to click around, like it's not recognizing where I'm at, like, or there's no cursor on the screen, or I don't know what I'm selecting. It's like, especially when you're picking the tribes, it almost seems like the one that I'm not selecting is the one that I am selecting. Like it looks the dullest of them all. But I don't know. It's just like the few little small gripes when I'm playing on the Switch. Like it feels like it would play a little better if you're just grabbing a mouse and dragging and dropping these cards and whipping them around, and it'd be a little easier to rearrange them and stuff like that more quickly. So I'd be like more inclined to want to do it every turn. Whereas like when I'm doing it with the gamepad, I'm like, do I really want to, click over and move everything around? And I don't know. I just get a little bit, I just want to rip through these kind of arcadey style games, but I don't know. I just really like the structure of it. I like the pacing of it. I love the music. I love the art style, even though I, complained about it being somewhat similar, but it's very like, I don't know, all the characters and cards have so much personality to them. And I don't know, I just think it's a really unique game that's got a ton of depth. And like I mentioned too, on that Save It for the Cast, it's like they had just put out a pretty huge update from what I understand it, like virtually like, I don't know if it doubled the size of the game, but like they added like another like 25 or 50%, to the total cards or something like that. So pretty massive update that added a bunch of new stuff. There's daily challenges and stuff like that. I haven't dove into that just yet because I looked at the one for today and it was like had a bunch of stuff that I haven't seen yet. So I'm like, I'm still kind of grinding, doing the different various challenges that you just for using like, equip 10, passive buff charms and you unlock a new thing. And, kind of like a typical roguelike where you're just doing certain things for achievements to unlock things. And it's just kind of, for me, I'm just kind of naturally achieving them. I'm not having to set out and say,
must be nice.
let me do this specific thing. Like most of them are just seeming like they're happening naturally, within a,
the flow of the game,
normal way of playing the game. Just spend this amount of money in the shop, or, or buy items on sale, or, stuff like that. So, nice. But yeah, just a really cool game that I thought was worth talking about a little bit more, because it's really the main video game I've been playing lately. But yeah, what about you, John? What have you been playing as of late?
I've been replaying a lot of the same stuff over and over again. I've got nothing new, but
beautiful.
I've been playing a lot more of the Gnorp Apologue, which I've mentioned on a previous episode. Yeah. And it's the idle clicker physics, what would you even call it, simulator of just showing particle effects of a rock getting slammed and turned into shards in a
infinitely.
Infinitely with a great view like of all of these particles flying around in the screen and nice little dances and choreography. But I've been at the point where I've gotten a lot of the unlocks in the skill tree, so to speak, I'm not sure what it's technically called in this particular game, but you have your ascension mechanic where you're redoing runs and starting over from scratch, but you're a little bit stronger, or you've unlocked a little bit more mechanics. And like when you were talking about there being so many mechanics in your game, like I was thinking, it was like, yeah, it's kind of what I'm running up against now at the Gnorp Apologue. And I know that in a idle game specifically, there's the if you look up strategies, it's always going to be like, what is mathematically like the like best option that you can do?
Yeah,
to,
the
like,
min max.
Yeah, that to absolutely maximize your output, get this done as efficiently as possible. And I've been resisting that urge just because I feel like part of the fun of this game in particular is trying to find out and like running into a situation where the skill like path that I've chosen is a bad one, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why is this not like working? Or why are the ice arrows better than the fire arrows? I do not understand from like its description and how it interplays with all of my other Gnorps that are doing so many different things. And like, that's part of that struggle is the fun of the game for me. But at the same time, the consequences are that it just goes so much more slowly than it possibly could. And that's, maybe the difficulty of the game. I don't know what you would classify that. It just means that the game has to run for longer, or you have to start over with no progress. And I'm too stubborn to like start over without having gained any additional prestige, which is the currency you use to unlock things in the skill tree. So I'll be like, no, I'll just let it run for an hour and like, I'll go do something else. But I don't know. It's the fun of it. And like, I really do think it's it's a cute game. It like looks nice as in terms of, it's not just numbers going up on like a static image or like an idle animation of a thing that's getting clicked. It's, all of these little tiny, like, what's 1-bit sprites that every once in a while have like a third or fourth color added to them.
Yeah, it has like almost like an ant farm kind of vibe to it. You're like watching like a side view of like an ant farm. Like, now you don't have the tunnels and stuff. It's just kind of like a side, scrolling one platform. But
you got your little guys that are slamming into the rock to create shards, your runners, which are running to collect shards. Then you got the ones in jetpacks. Then you got the ones with like rifles that at some point in the game. So it is nice to just kind of watch. And I think we talked about it last episode, how if you do let it hit idle, then the camera kind of just starts following individual Gnorps as they do their tasks. So then it, kind of gets disjointed from whatever you were doing, and like you get to see this little scenario play out from different angles that you wouldn't be able to do if you were manually controlling the camera. So it's nice. It's a very good idle game that I have enjoyed playing, and I feel like I'm somewhat close to the end of the game. I know that one of the achievements say that there is a beat the Gnorp Apologue, so there's at the very least an end to the game. And I feel like...
Are you still...
No, I was just...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, based on the unlocks and I think, compression events are what the term is for, it unlocks the major currency, or the, like, the one that unlocks the most radically different mechanics in it. Zybellium, I think it's called. And like I think you can only get to 10 of those compression events, and I'm at like 8 out of 10. And who knows, maybe there's a skill tree that adds additional compression events and then like extends the game. So, but it's fun. I love poking around in a system and trying to figure out how the systems interplay with each other. And I think it does a really good job of that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you had still been playing like exclusively on Steam Deck too, because I know it's like a little tedious to just be using those joystick or whatever, cursor controls.
It had not even occurred to me that I could also be playing it on my computer because there is cloud saves. Oh, well, whatever. I'm in for a penny, in for a pound. I've done this for so long, I might as well keep doing it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely is a fun one. I totally feel you too, because sometimes you got to lean into, especially with a game like that, you got to kind of poke around the edges, and like, even if it's like, I know this one would be better, but I almost want to see like maybe this one will be funny, or maybe this one will like do something unexpected, or like that game definitely has some surprises in store, I feel. So
100%. But the last game that I'm going to talk about tonight, which if you do not want to hear like in-depth talk about mathematics, skip ahead to the next section because
Timestamps as always, baby.
And also, if you don't want Hexle strategy spoilers, which is what I'm going to qualify it as, because I love figuring out in puzzle games like Baba Is You, or in Hexle in particular, like I love figuring out something on my own and like recognizing patterns and then applying those patterns, because I've just gotten to the point where I've unlocked every mode in Hexle, which is a PUNKCAKE Delicio game of a Sudoku and Picross like family of puzzle games, where there's a 4x4 grid and you have the hexadecimal digits 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, A, B, C, D, E, F. And you are arranging those 16 hexadecimal digits in those 4x4 grids. And then those are usually in tandem in other larger grids of those like 4x4 grids. So the easiest grid is just, I think maybe it's just in the tutorial where they just have you fill out like one of those 4x4 grids, because you have to fit in all 16 digits into that. And then I don't think I went really in depth into the mechanics and of all like the rules, because the tutorial lays out the 3 main rules, which is the first one is that every 4x4 grid has to have each digit in it once. And then the next rule, I think, I don't know how they tell them to you, is that there are every one of those bits or every one of those digits can be expressed as a sum of bits.
I was going to say, they definitely use the term bits, because I remember I was like definitely like I was like late at night. I was like, I'm going to check this new PUNKCAKE game out. Now they started talking bits, and I was like, I don't have the brain power for this right now. So even in the tutorial, I was like, this is breaking my brain.
Yeah, and it's but it's so satisfying once you get a handle on it. Like it's really this is gonna be one of my favorite games of the year. I can guarantee it. Like, but every digit can be expressed as the sum of the 4 bits, which are 1, 2, 4, and 8. So 3 can be expressed as the sum of 1 and 2. Well, okay. I'm going to be backtracking a lot. So the way that you can also, I love the way that this game has settings, and the way that you can organize bits is by complexity. And that is the way that I have it organized whenever I'm trying to enter a digit into these grids. And so it starts off with the bits, which are 1, 2, 4, and 8, and those are expressed as themselves, and they have special properties because everything else has to be in a cross section between those bits. So like I was saying, 3 can be expressed as the sum of 1 and 2. So 3 has to be in the cross section grid of 1 and 2, and 1, 2, 4, and 8 cannot be in the same column or row as each other. So that's how you start getting these little cross sections of, 1 is in one row and column and 2 is in another row and column. So 3 has to be at the cross section of where those 2 columns and rows meet. And then you start having those in a line, which is when you have multiple grids next to each other. So if you have every digit can only be in a line once. So it's a little bit less helpful when you have only, like, say, 2 of these 4x4 grids next to each other. But once you have 4 of them and you have a full 8 grid squares in a row or a column, then it's the same as a Sudoku, where a row or a column across all grids and all like combinations of them will only have 1 digit. So then you can use that to narrow it down. in the same way that you would by using the Sudoku rules of within the grid, every digit has to be in there once. And another one of the settings, which I wasn't using initially, but I've turned on now, is that it can gray out digits that are unplayable, basically.
Okay.
And it makes it a lot easier. I initially only turned on the one that would, if you had already placed it within the grid, it would gray it out. But then after a while, I was like really trying to get the achievement of having 0 mistakes on like the weekly, which is a massive grid, and then the master 8x8 grid. And I was like, all right, you know what? I need to turn on all the like safety features and precautions to keep me from accidentally putting in, something that I don't want. But then it also like kind of helps you to recognize patterns where you're like, okay, well, this is saying that the only digit that can go here is this one, and I don't see that. And then you can use it to like, okay, well, let me
figure out why.
Yeah, the row of the entire thing. And then I'm at the point now where I'm starting to internalize secondary, tertiary patterns or rules, and that kind of feels like how the game was coded in terms of like, well, they have to, like, PUNKCAKE has to code these to randomly generate, like they're generated every time that you boot one up. So there has to be parameters that aren't necessarily communicated to you, the player. And it at some point it feels like a little bit like solving the meta game in terms of like figuring out how these are constructed. But I'm now being like, okay, well, if say 3 and 9 are in the same row as each other, then that has to be 1 because, or 1 has to be in that row as opposed to in a column for either of those, because the only bit that those two share is 1. It's 1 and 2 and 1 and 8. So that narrows it down. And then when you have cross sections of the second level complexity ones are 3, 6, 9, A and C, which are the combinations of 1, 2, or of 2 of the bits. Those are those. And then the next level of complexity are 3 combinations of bits. So 7 is 1, 2, and 4. Oh God, I'm trying to do these off the dome instead of having them in front. But like E is 2, 4, and 8. And then once you get to the final level of complexity, it is F, which is any of them, and 0, which is none of them, which is for this purposes also any of them. So like 0 and F can be placed anywhere, and that's kind of how the wild cards that make it so that this game is even possible on like a 4x4 or like larger grid. And man, the thing that like was one of the biggest aha moments was when I was doing a master, which is 4 of the 4x4 grids by 4x4x4. I don't know how you say it, or
all stitched together or whatever though.
And I noticed that the 0 had to be in either the exact same cross section of bits in every single subgrid, or it had to be in like one of 2 combinations. So like if it was like at the cross section of 2 and 8, it was going to be in the cross section of 2 and 8 in every single like subgrid. And the second that I like put that together, I was like, holy shit, this game is so good. This is so fascinating how they like sat down and figured it out. And then later on, when I found one where that wasn't the case, I was like, well, what the fuck? What's the secondary condition that this didn't meet that like that makes this not true? And then I realized that I was like, okay, well then I see like half of these subgrids have it at the intersection of 2 and 8. and the other half have it at the intersection of 1 and 4. So like they had to have split like the way that they were organized, and I don't know how you figure that pattern out, but like it's just so many levels of pattern recognition.
Yeah, just patterns. Yeah,
and it's so fun. It's so satisfying for my brain to do. But I'm at the point where the only achievements are the ones where it's like finish a weekly mega board with no mistakes, and like I will sit there and agonize for like 2.5 hours. And then I'll make a mistake. And I was like, cool, guess I'll try again in a week.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
It's so fun. I love it.
I'm glad it has the hooks in you. I pretty much grokked pretty much none of what you said there in terms of like what I'm supposed to. I was like thinking like maybe John's going to give me some good tips here to take it. I'm like, okay, John just made this game sound even more confusing to me than I thought it was
math,
before.
Baby.
But I think, like I said, a lot of times, especially when I fire up a game like that, that's like, because at its core, it's kind of like an arcade game, obviously it takes a little longer than that, but you're just like beating a level or whatever.
Yeah.
But so when I'm doing something like that, especially when it's a game that like once I get the feel of the music and whatever, I'm just like, I just want to like put on a podcast and whatever. But this seems like a game you got to like kind of focus on for a minute,
It's interesting because I kind of use it to like dissociate or to like let my brain defrag, where I'll just like be looking at it and all I'm doing is just like listening to a podcast while I'm playing the game, or just kind of zoning out and being like, all right, well, here's a C, so where's the 4 and the 8 go? This one has like, and then this one has an A, so where's the 8, the 2 and the 8? And I'm just muttering to myself. So I'm sure Lauren loves hearing that, but yeah, it's so fun for like my brain in particular to like have like this low stakes pattern recognition. And like it's back when I took the train out to a suburb for work every single day, like I would pick up the newspaper and I would do the daily Sudoku, and then once I got bored of that, then I picked up the free Picross game on my phone. And like once I exhausted that, I was like, it's just, I like having a new puzzle game like this, and it's been so long since I found a new one, and I like almost to the point where I didn't think it was possible, and like it's so impressive. I think this is just a real masterpiece of a game.
Heck yeah. I'm glad your PUNKCAKE's got the hooks in you. So heck yeah. Well, I guess I'll talk about that last game that I was kind of teasing at the beginning here, the board game that I was going to talk about. I feel like it was been a little while since we talked about like a board game or like an actual physical card game or something. I know in like the early days we talked about Hanabi, and I'm sure a couple other board games have come up over the years. But the reason I wanted to talk about this game, like I mentioned, I went on a little out of town trip for the weekend with some friends. And one of my friend's brothers, who's a friend of mine as well, I know him from growing up and everything. I've known all these guys for a really long time, so it was great just going on the trip and connecting with everybody again. Especially seeing like some of my buddies' younger brothers who I don't see, quite nearly as much as I see my buddies. And my buddy's brother Nathan reminds me a lot of our buddy DJ, who was on the podcast in the early days. Like he shows up with a big duffel bag full of like all his retro video game systems and all his board games and whatever. Just very, and like again, we used to be pretty into playing board games back in the day. Like again, DJ would bring over like literally a dozen different games about what do you guys want to play, and like
we had a board game night before we had a movie night.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things, as much as I loved playing those board games, and especially once like if we found a game or a card game or whatever that we got to know and like kind of learn the rules of and everybody liked, it was even more fun because we could just dive right into it. Whereas like sometimes we'd be like, oh, like DJ would have a game that looked really cool and like, hey, let's play this, and like, okay, we just spent 2 hours trying to learn this game and like we're still all confused about the rules. We haven't even really started. Mm-hmm. Then we kind of found a groove of like finding a YouTube video of like watching, finding like a tutorial kind of thing or explaining a game online. And that usually was like a little more effective than trying to figure it out ourselves and reading the instructions with a group of friends trying to hang out. So the reason why I was so impressed with this game here, this game's called Fire Tower, is that we went and played this game and it was just like immediate. I've never played a game that was just so, we just sat down, my buddy's brother explained the rules to us for like, 5-10 minutes. And then we just started playing the game, and it was immediate, and the game just caught my eye instantly. So again, the game's called Fire Tower. You can play with up to 2 to 4 players. We played with 4 players here in the round that I played anyways. And basically it's kind of like a forest fire themed game. So like the game, you're looking at like a top down grid, and it's basically just split into squares. I'm trying to think of how many total squares there would be. I'm thinking it's probably like 4 16 by 16 grid. Maybe it's 12 by 12 or something. But basically in the corner 9 tiles of each grid are like the actual fire tower that like each team is like essentially defending, or each player is essentially defending. And then the fire starts right in the middle, the very like 4 center tiles. There's like a big kind of fire. And again, like the game just is so eye-catching. Like the top-down look of the trees is just this really beautiful, like painted watercolor kind of look. I just read the colors really caught my eye, and then it has these like see-through orange plastic like fire gem tokens that just like they're not all the same. They all have like a slightly different I'm sure there's like a few different shape variations that they just duplicate, but like just something about the way they catch the light. It's just such a cool looking. As soon as he pulled it out, I was like, hey, what's that? Nice. And like immediately wanted to play this game just by looking at it. And then once he explained it, I was like, oh, awesome. So anyways, you have a 8-sided die to start, and I think there's just 2 that has north, south, east, and west on it. So no, just the cardinal directions. So there's, I think, 2 of each direction on there, and you roll that, and that's the direction of the wind. And then so every player's turn, and then you also have cards. So every player's turn, they start by placing a new fire token, and you have to place a fire token in the direction that the wind is blowing. So like from that center like bonfire. So let's say we rolled west, you have to place one off to the west of that. So essentially you're almost building like a Scrabble network or a crossword network eventually once the wind keeps changing. So then once you place your fire tile, then you play a card, and the card can be anything. The card might be an explosion, which means like it'll place this like dead spot that now a fire can't be started in the middle, but then all 8 surrounding tiles are on fire. Or you'll get like I forget what all the cards are called, but you get like a card that you can do like a 3, slash of fire that'll do 3 tiles in a row in any direction, like regardless of the wind. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of start being like, okay, I need to start laying the heat on this person. But then you'll also get water cards, so you can like parachute in and, cool off 3 tiles that are adjacent to one another, or drop in and cool off 4 tiles. Or you also have like a once somebody gets into like your 9 tiles where your fire tower is, you die if somebody gets like all the way to your very last corner tile.
Nice.
But once they get into your 9 corner tiles, then you have a bucket also that can clear 3 adjacent tiles, and that's kind of like your last ditch effort. And then you actually, after you use that bucket, you flip that card over, and it gives you like another thing that to me, it seems like it doesn't really help you win. It more lets you like screw people over. You can like start a bit, like sacrifice 3 of this type of card to like make more fire on the board. Right. But basically it's just constantly, and then some of the other cards you might get are just like change the direction of the wind. So you're constantly, okay, the wind's coming towards me and everyone's, laying the heat on me literally. So now I got to like play this card. But the thing that's cool about those wind cards is they're not only to change the direction of the wind. I think it has 3 different things. It's like change the direction of the wind to the west, or place a fire tile to the west, like even if the wind isn't blowing that. I forget what the 3 things are, but it's like you always have like some different choices, and then you can also build, I think they're called like dozer tiles, or I forget what they're actually called, but they're like those blocker tiles. So I'm basically putting this up, so now fire cannot be started on this. You got to go around this wall that I'm forming essentially. Ooh. So there's just so many different like things going on, but like the way it's like the card, like it'll show you right on the grid, like it'll say like you have to place 2 of these like dead tiles, adjacent to one another, or not adjacent, they can't be touching it. It'll show you like a little drawn out grid of like where you can put them, or exactly. It's just so obvious. I've just never played a board game that was so instantaneously easy for everyone to understand. And we were all drinking and having a good time. Like we weren't, it wasn't the best situation to be learning a new board game, but man, I have never had so much fun. Like immediately, I was telling you, not quite immediately, but like first time I logged into Amazon since I've been back from the trip, and I was like, I'm adding this game to the cart. And I'm definitely adding the expansion pack. And he said you can just get it like at Target. It's available like anywhere you can find games. But like, and they actually have a pretty decent selection of like kind of cool, you know, like not just your standard Monopoly Trouble board games at Target these days. But yeah, if I was looking on Amazon, they have like the full, like the regular game, and that's like some kind of deluxe version of it with a few upgraded components and whatnot. And then there's like also an expansion pass or expansion pack, I should say, that adds like some new gameplay elements and like 2 different kind of modes, if you will. And you can get that whole pack for like $80. The game itself is only like 40, I think, 30 or 40. Not that that's cheap, but for this game, like it's like immediately I was like, I need to play this game with like a bigger group of friends. And being that it was, if one of my friends in my friend group had it, I wouldn't be like, I got to buy this game, but it's my friend's brother. I don't see him quite as much. So I'm like, we got to have this game like at the ready for when we're hanging out. And it's one that next time I'm coming to Chicago, I'm like, I'm bringing this. It's just so easy. I don't know. I love it. And again, the expansion stuff, like my buddy's brother was telling me a little bit about it. Like they adds like some water elements, like actual water, like tokens and tiles. So like it's not just putting out the fire. You're actually kind of like laying like a layer of water on the board. I didn't get the full understanding of that. And then even after you die, you like become a ghost and you can still win the game. Like you become like the spirit of the woods. And I didn't fully understand how that element worked. I feel like that's the one part that he just kind of, he was, oh yeah, I forgot about this. And then we just like kind of did it.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I just felt like it was I just was so impressed by every element of the game, just the production value of like the package, but just the like simplicity, but strategy and like how quick the tables would turn. Like all of a sudden it was like everybody was kind of ganging up on my buddy Josh and JP. And then like once, like it just seemed like everyone was like, all right, let's get Josh. And then all of a sudden, like the wind started blowing my way and it's like, all right, get Kev. And it's like, what the hell, man? I thought we were ganging up on Josh. So I don't know. I just really loved how fast it was too. It wasn't a very long game. Sometimes those board games can get drawn out forever. So I don't know. I can't say enough great things about this game. I would honestly say it's my favorite like board game I've ever played. It's awesome. I really love this one. And I'm looking forward to playing it again and hopefully maybe understanding the rules even a little bit more, like making sure I fully understand like the after death element and stuff like that. And I don't know, I'm just definitely going to be getting this game sometime soon. So
yeah, I just sent it to my family thread because like the board that you talked about, I was like, yep, nope, this is extremely up our alley.
Yeah, it's awesome. Again, I can't speak for the expansion stuff, but it looked like it was equally well done. I can't remember the names of the 2 people, but it looked like it was kind of designed by 2, developers or designers. So, if they make anything new, I'll definitely be curious to see what they do after this as well. But it's just such a elegantly designed game. Again, both from like the just presentation of everything and the just execution of the gameplay and just all elements. I love this game.
Nice.
Yeah, but I don't know. That's enough. I was going to say video games chit chat, but I guess just enough gaming chit chat for tonight, I would say, unless you got anything else to add here, John.
Nah, I think we got it.
Nice. Well, yeah, as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com and just about everywhere else. I'm going to be streaming a bunch. I guess it'll be after the fact here. But checking out the Game Jam game stuff. So I'll definitely be talking about those. I'm sure we'll get around to chatting about some of those on the podcast here too. So, but yeah, as always, we'll catch you next week. And until then, take care.
Bye.
Almost totally forgot the outro there. I was like at a loss for words for a second. I was kind of like that today at the end of the day at work too. I had like a couple phone calls where I was like talking to people and like at the end of the call I was like but that's all, folks.
Yeah, this game sounds incredible.
That Fire Tower game is amazing. I have never had and the game, yeah, I think it took us like 20-30 minutes. And that was like, well, we're all like getting the rules explained to us kind of as we play.
Fire tokens look so good.
Dude, the way they catch the light, and we were kind of in like a wood cabin kind of vibe.
Are they all different shapes too?
To me, yeah. I don't think, like, I think I said that at some point. Like, I don't know if they're all like, there
might be like 5 shapes or something.
Yeah, exactly. I bet you there's like 5 or 6 different ones, but they're not all identical. And then because of that, the way they catch the light on the board,
This looks
or even just in
incredible,
the bag, dude. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. I've never played a better board game, and like so easy to get into. Like that's the main thing I was so impressed with. Is just like, no, I shouldn't even say that because it's just so good.
Yeah.
Every turn I was like, but you weren't
as you're describing like
moves.
the wind part of it. I was like, damn, that's a good mechanic. That's so smart.
I know, and like there'll be long stretches where the wind just stays in the same direction, but then there'll be other times where it's just changing or like you'll finally get it to change and then it just goes right back. And oh man, it's just so good, and it's like purely competitive, but like it definitely like it felt like, okay, we're kind of teaming up on those guys, and now they're teaming up on us, and like. I don't know. It's so good. Or like, hey, I'm going to help out Nathan over here because he's, if I help him out, maybe he'll help me kill those guys. It's just, it's so good. Yeah, your family would like that game. I forgot that you guys really get into the board game stuff.
Yeah. I'm not going to be able to do the family vacation this year, but that would have been such a good one to bring.